Hello and welcome to Linux Lab 3. My name's Kevin Large and I'll be your instructor for this session. So what is Linux Lab 3? In this lab we'll be looking at user and group management from the command line interface. So we'll be looking at important system files related to user and group management. These are the etc password, etc shadow and etc group files. A little bit more of that later on. We'll be looking at adding and deleting users, adding and deleting groups, locking and unlocking a user's account on the system, adding users to a group, and finally removing users from a group. So we'll bring our system up, and this is a fresh installation of Debian Linux running in VirtualBox, and we'll see if we can get the tasks moving along. Okay, we're not going to do this from the graphical user interface. Many of these tasks can be done from the graphical user interface, but it's generally a lot quicker and more efficient and more impressive to do them from the command line. So let's bring a command line up, or a shell or terminal as it's known. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to type Alt and F2 at the same time on the keyboard. This will bring up a little box where I can enter in the name of an application on the system and it will run that application. It's a little bit like the start run on a Windows machine. So I'm going to type in gnome-terminal, and the gnome terminal is our shell. I'm going to double click on the taskbar at the top to maximize it, and you can see that I am logged in as the user Kevin on a system whose hostname is Debian. The $sign indicates I'm just a normal user. I'm not the super user or the administrator on the system. In fact, let's run a little command to see who I am. And that command, believe it or not, is who am I. And it says you are Kevin. So that's the user I'm currently logged in as. I can type the command hostname. That will tell me the system I'm currently logged in. So the hostname of the system I'm on is Debian. I can type pwd, short for print working directory. Prints onto the screen the directory that I'm working in. So where am I located in the file system effectively? It says you are in home Kevin. Every user on the system will have a folder, effectively like the Windows My Documents folder, I guess you could say. And that folder will be the user's name, and it will be located inside the home directory. There is one exception. The root user, or the administrator on a Linux machine, will have a folder specifically in /root. Okay, so let's see what groups the user Kevin belongs to just quickly, and we can do that by typing groups, and you can see that Kevin belongs to the following groups. When you create a user, you create a group for that user. So Kevin belongs to the Kevin group, the CD-ROM group, the floppy group for the floppy drive, the audio group, and various other groups on the system, including the Bluetooth group at the end there. Another command you can use to do the same thing is ID. An ID will show you my user ID, UID, of 1000, my group ID of also 1000, and it will show me the groups that I belong to, the CD-ROM group, the floppy group, the audio group, etc. The same groups that we saw in the groups command above, only on this occasion you can actually see the IDs for these groups as well. So that's a nice command. I'm going to clear the screen. Now on a Windows machine that's CLS, but on a Linux machine it's probably even simpler. You just type clear and that will clear the screen. And now what we're going to do is we're going to have a little look at some of the file systems that are used for user and group management purposes. Now, I don't really want to do this as a normal user, because currently, as we saw, I'm logged in as Kevin, just a normal user. I want to become the super user, the administrator. In this case, being it's a Linux system, that would be the root user. And to do that, I will type SU for switch user and hit enter. It will prompt me for my root user's password, which I will now type in. You'll see it doesn't appear on the screen, so it doesn't give away any useful information like the number of characters in the password. And the only change you can see on here is I now have a hash instead of a $sign. The hash indicates I'm the root user. If anybody's used a Cisco device, this is a little bit like going into enable mode on a Cisco device. You can see that it says I am the user root. We can confirm that by typing who am I again. Yes, you are the user root. And I'm currently still in Kevin's home directory, because that's the home directory that I was in originally. We can confirm that as well by typing pwd. Okay. What we'd like to do is we'd like to change to the root user's home directory. We can do that by typing cd. Just change directory with nothing behind it will change to your currently logged in user's home directory. Okay. Now if I type pwd, you'll notice I'm in /root. That's the only exception. Normal users on the system will have a home directory in /home, but root has their own special home directory in /root. Okay, let's have a little look at those files. I'm going to do a clear of the screen again. And the first file we're going to look at will be etc password. etc/passwd. Typed in just like that. Now cat prints the contents of a file to the screen. So if we do a cat of etc password, you can see there are quite a number of users on this system. Okay, and you can see the user Kevin down here. Most of these users have a very low user ID number. This means that they're system users. Normal users that we add to a system will start with the user ID and the group ID of 1000. The user Kevin, by the way, was installed to the system when we did the initial installation of the operating system. Okay. Now it would be nice to not have to print the entire file if I'm only looking for a small portion of that file. I can type tail -5 /etc/passwd, and what tail will do, tail -5 will print the last 5 lines of the file. So there we go, that's useful. I could be even more crafty than that. I could type grep, there's a lot of Linux commands coming up here, grep Kevin /etc/passwd. And what grep will do, grep will actually search for the word or the string Kevin in that great big list of usernames. So by doing that, you'll notice all we get coming up on the screen is the line with Kevin in, which is quite nice. Okay, so we'll clear the screen again. We'll run the last command, and you can see that there is a user with a user ID and a group ID of 1000 of Kevin. Another useful file to have a little look at, and I'm just going to use the up arrow now to put the last command back in, is the shadow file. And the shadow file contains the password, but of course it doesn't actually contain the real password. I can tell you that the password for this user is actually QWERTY. It's the first 6 letters on the keyboard, QWERTY. But if we look in the shadow file, you will notice that is not QWERTY. That is some pretty serious jumbling up of the word QWERTY. In fact, what we've got there is we've actually not got the password, we've got the hash of the password. And this is the hash of the password, QWERTY, this little section there. Okay. The $6 effectively means that what we're using in order to do the hashing is we're using a SHA secure hashing algorithm 512, which is an extremely strong hashing algorithm. In fact, we're using multiple rounds of SHA 512. Okay, but we're starting to bleed into cryptography there, which is probably taking things a bit too far. But it's interesting, isn't it? So that is QWERTY after it's gone through multiple rounds of secure hashing algorithm 512. Quite scary stuff. Right, so looking at that, what do we want to have a little look at next? We've had a look at the password file, which contains the username, contains the user ID, the group ID, the full name of the user, where the user's home directory lives, effectively their My Documents folder, I suppose you could say, what shell they're using, the bash shell, which is the shell we're actually typing everything in now at the moment. We've looked at the shadow file, which contains the hashed password for the user. We could have a little look at the group file. I'll use tail again, and I'll have a look at the last 5 entries in Etsy group. Excellent. Okay, and you can see when we created the user Kevin, we also created a group for Kevin. But there are no other groups on the system, and there are actually no other users on the system. If I look at password, or should I say there are no other normal users on the system. There are plenty of system users, but normal users will have numbers above 1000 for their user ID and their group ID. Okay, so that being the case, I suppose we really ought to start making some users. And what we'll do is, I'll just clear the screen. You can actually clear the screen by typing Control L. That will also clear the screen. I'm going to create 4 users, and those users will be Bob, Fred, Emma and Linda. Okay, easiest way to do that from the command line is to use the add user command. So add user Bob. Now be aware, on a Linux system, users must have lowercase letters. Okay, so Bob will not work. It doesn't like that at all. But if we use lowercase, no problem. Okay, so it's adding the user Bob. It's adding a new group for Bob. Notice the user ID is 1 higher than the user Kevin, the only non-system user on the system at the moment. It's adding the user Bob, adding a group Bob, adding the user Bob to the group. It's creating a home folder for Bob in home Bob, and it's copying what's known as the Etsy scale across. This is a bit like the profiles on a Windows system. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to enter a password for the user Bob, which will be QWERTY. Not a particularly good password. You definitely don't want to use that on a real system because your password cracking program will break it in no time at all. So you notice the password didn't appear on the screen. We can give the user a full name, Bob the Builder, for instance. Room numbers, phone numbers, home phone numbers, etc. Most of that I'm not going to really bother with. And then it's going to ask, is this information correct? And we just say yes. And believe it or not, you have now created a user on the system. If we have a little look in Etsy password again, we will see that not only do we have the user Kevin, which was created during installation, but we've now added a user to the system called Bob. You can even see that the full name for the user Bob is Bob the Builder, and their home directory is home Bob. Okay, let's speed things up a little bit. I'm going to clear the screen again with a Control L. I'm going to use the up arrow to find user Bob, and I'll start creating the other users a little bit quicker. So user Emma, I'm going to give her the same password, QWERTY. I'm not going to bother with the full name from this point on. We'll just work our way down. Yes, the information is correct. So now we have Bob and Emma on the system. Who else do we want to put on the system? We want to put Fred and Linda. So Fred, again, QWERTY. And finally, we want the user Linda. Okay, QWERTY. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually create one more user, purely so as I can delete that user. Okay, I will create the user Tracy. There we go. For no other reason than I want to show you how to delete the user. This way I can delete Tracy, and Bob, Emma, Fred and Linda will still be on the system. Okay, so how many users have I created? I should have created 5 users. So let's do tail minus 5. Actually, yeah, tail minus 5. 5 users. They were only recently created, so they should be at the bottom of the file. So the last 5 lines in the file, Etsy password, should contain my 5 users. And there they are. How cool is that? The user Bob, Emma, Fred, Linda and Tracy, with increasing user IDs and group IDs, with their home directories, and they're all using the bash shell. So we now have 5 users on the system. If I have a look in the Etsy shadow file, we can have a look at the encrypted hash of the password for those users. Now bear in mind, the password is the same for all the users, but do you think the hash would be the same? Obviously not. Yeah, the hash uses a much more sophisticated method for creation rather than just the actual password. So even though each one of these users all has the same password of QWERTY, the hashes are very different. It's a massively strong system from a security perspective. Okay, what we'll do now is we will remove a user. Now, how can we remove a user? Well, there's numerous ways, but we'll just use the easiest way. So that would be user del. Okay. Now, if I type user del and Tracy, it will remove the user Tracy, but it will also leave her home directory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type user del space hyphen lowercase r. And what that will do is that will remove the user Tracy, but it will also remove her home directory. Okay, cool. Don't worry about that little thing where it says about var mail Tracy not found. That's actually not important. That's to do with the way the mail, system mail is logged on the system, but it's of no relevance to us. The user Tracy will now have disappeared. If we do the tail command again, you will notice, whereas before we had a user called Tracy, now Tracy is gone. We just have our 4 users, Bob, Emma, Fred and Linda. Excellent. Okay. Well, that's users created and users deleted. What we will now do is we'll move on quickly to creating groups. So we'll create 3 groups. We'll create sales, research and, I don't know, management. And then we'll delete management, because everybody's wanted to do that at some point in their life, delete the management. So here we go. Right, how do we create groups? Good question. It's simply add group. Okay, add group followed by the group name. So again, we cannot use uppercase. So if you try to add a group called sales with an uppercase, it's not going to like it. Okay, so add group sales, and it's added a group called sales with a group ID of 1005. Very quick. We'll add a group called research, and there is our group research. And finally, we'll add a group called management, just so as we can delete them. Management. Okay. Excellent. That looks good. So how can we find out where these groups are? How many groups do we have on the system that we've literally just added? They'll be on the bottom of the etc group file. Now we could type cat etc group. Hold on a minute. Helps when you spell it properly. etc group. Okay. And you can see all of the groups on the system, and boy, there's quite a few groups. Most of these are actually system groups. LP, for instance, line printer, TTY for the disks on the system and things like that. Tape for tape backups in case this was a server and things like that. But of interest to us is the last 3 lines. We've got sales, research and management. You notice there's also a group for Emma, Fred, Linda and Bob. Okay. What we're going to do, we don't want the management group on there, so we'll, without further ado, remove the management group. I'll just clear the screen. How do we remove a group? Group del. Okay, group del, and it literally is just typing group del and then the name of the group you need to remove. Now if the group doesn't exist, it will tell you. So if we just put a group in there that doesn't exist, there you go. Management. Bang. Management group gone. No real confirmation there. I suppose the only way we can check is to have a little look at etc group again. And you can see we now have only sales and research. Management has disappeared. Now to be fair, I wouldn't do it that way. I wouldn't use cat, because cat prints so much stuff on the screen. It prints the whole file on the screen. Most of it goes whizzing off the top of the screen. What I would do instead is I would do a tail -5, I think, just to look at the last 5 lines. And you can see we've got Emma, Fred, Linda, sales and research in there. Okay, we're missing Bob. Let's get Bob in there as well. Sorry, I'm just playing now. There we go, tail -6, the last 6 lines. Bob, Emma, Fred, Linda, sales and research. Excellent. So we've created a group, we've deleted a group, we've created users, we've deleted users. What should we do now? I know. We'll lock a user's account. Now this is very straightforward to do. You have to be the administrator in order to do this, which makes sense. So we need to be the root user, but of course we are currently the root user, so that's fine. How do we lock an account? Well, first of all, I need to show you just quickly how the process works. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look in the etc shadow file. I'll look in the etc shadow file, which is where the hashed versions of the passwords are stored. So tail -6 etc shadow, last 6 lines, and you can see in there, we got Kevin, we got vbox add that has no password. This is actually because I'm running a piece of software on the system called VirtualBox. It's a virtualization environment. In fact, it's the one that we're running this Linux host in. That's crept in the middle there because it was added, VirtualBox was added after I did the initial install, so that's why it appears in the list there. But we've got Bob, Emma, Fred and Linda. Now if you notice, what we were saying was that $6 indicates that we're using SHA-512, Secure Hash Algorithm 512, for generating the hashes of the password. And then we actually have the hashes of the password, which is the enormous amount of jumbled text that follows. But if you look in front of the first $sign, there's nothing in front of the first $sign. But there will be, because the way that you lock an account is you do this. Let's lock Linda's account for a moment. Just need to remember to unlock it. Use the command passwd. Now passwd would normally be used to change a user's password, but in this particular case we're going to use it to lock and unlock an account. Passwd -L for lock, and then the username of the account you wish to lock. So we're going to lock Linda's account, and it literally is as simple as that. Doesn't look like very much has happened there, but if we look in the etc shadow file again, there's a very subtle difference. If you look in front of the first $sign, there is now an exclamation mark. What that does is that makes that hashed password unrecognizable, and that's how we lock an account. That password is now unrecognizable to the system, so it doesn't matter what you type trying to get into Linda's account, it will simply turn around and ignore it and say nope, not accepting it, nope, not accepting it. So it's effectively locked that user out of the system by making their password completely unrecognizable by the system. You could type in any password you like, you will not get in because that account is now locked. Okay. To unlock a user, it's no more complicated than typing passwd -u. So passwd space -u space and then the username Linda. Okay, we'll run the tail command again, and you'll notice that the asterisk has now gone. That user has been unlocked. So locking a user, passwd -l username, unlocking a user, passwd -u username. Pretty cool. Okay, we're nearly there. All we need to do now is we need to show you how to add a user to a group. And the way that you add a user to a group is quite straightforward. Let's just clear the screen. First of all, let's have a little look in etc group. I will do a tail minus, let's have a look at the last 10 lines of etc group. And there you go, there's some users. Should I say there's some groups. We've got Bob, Emma, Fred and Linda. When those user accounts were created, they automatically created groups for them. And we've got the sales and the research group. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to add, let's see, who should we put where? Let's put Bob and Emma into the sales group. Now we can do that one at a time if we wish, and the way you do that is this. gpasswd, group password, -a for add, the name of the user you wish to put into the group, Bob, followed by the group, spelled properly preferably. Okay, be aware of course, lowercase for usernames, lowercase for groups. So we're going to add the user Bob to the group sales. Done. Now if we run that tail command, you will notice before sales had no users. Now the sales group has the user Bob in it. Easy life. If we use the up arrow to recall our previous commands, we change Bob to Emma, and hey presto, now the sales group has Bob and Emma in it. Excellent. Okay, if we wish to remove a user from a group, I can show you how to do that. Let's just temporarily remove Emma. You may well have guessed this one. If A is add, D is delete, removing Emma. Okay, and Emma has now disappeared from the group. Now I'm just going to put Emma back in the group because Emma's going to feel all alone if she's not in that sales group. So gpassword -A, Emma sales. Job done. And there you go. We have the user Bob and the user Emma in the sales group. Now I would like to now put Fred and Linda into the research group, but I don't really want to do them one at a time, so I'm going to do it a little bit quicker now. We'll do gpass wd, same command, we just use a different switch. It's hyphen uppercase M for multiple users. We will put Fred, comma, no spaces, and Linda into research. Oh, I do hope I created a group called research. I think I did, didn't I? Here we go. Notice, no congratulations, what a fantastic job you've done by doing that command. You are absolutely wonderful, so intelligent. Linux tends not to do that, give you congratulations if you get things right, but it will tell you if you get things wrong. The fact that it hasn't told us that we've got anything wrong means we probably got it right. But let's confirm that by looking in Etsy group. So tail -10, the last 10 lines of the Etsy group, and you can see that now we have Bob and Emma in the sales group and Fred and Linda in the research group. How cool is that? Okay, well that's all we were going to cover for this particular session. What we'll do in a little while is we'll move into some more sessions on how to create files, how to create multiple files, how to set permissions on files, and other useful administration jobs. One thing we will do before we go is I will type exit to move back to the user Kevin. I'll type su Emma to switch to the user Emma. Type Emma's password, which was QWERTY. Okay, you will notice that I'm now on the system logged in as the user Emma. I'm still in Kevin's home directory, but we know how to fix that. Just type cd with nothing following it. And now pwd will tell me that I'm in Emma's home directory, or Emma's My Documents folder if you like to put it that way. While I'm on the system as the user Emma, I'll do ID, and ID tells me that I have a user ID 1002 Emma, a group ID of 1002 Emma, and the groups that I belong to are my own group. You always belong to your own group, so that's Emma, and also sales, because Emma was of course placed in the sales group. Okay, and of course if I do a switch user to who's in the research group, Linda. Let's switch users to Linda, type Linda's password, cd, pwd, look at that, home Linda, oh, this is so good, ID, and there you go, look at that, Linda is in the research group. Superb. Now if I type exit, I'll exit from being logged in as Linda and go back to Emma. If I type exit again, I'll exit being logged in as Emma and go back to Kevin. If I type exit again, I exit from the terminal window altogether. And just to prove something, just very quickly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, let's have a little look, restart. Okay, and we'll restart the system, wait for it to load back up again. That's what we were doing, we were removing users from groups. Actually, did we remove users from groups? I think we've added users to groups, but we've not removed them yet. But notice, look at this. All of the users. Let's log in as Bob the Builder. Why not? Okay, Bob the Builder, QWERTY. We created the users in the command line, but notice, of course, they show up in the GUI. So I'm now logged in as Bob the Builder. I will use Alt F2 and I will type gnome-terminal to bring the GNOME terminal up. Okay, that's a little bit small, that display, because I'd played around with the other display in order to see what was happening a little bit easier. The text is a little bit small, so I'm just going to make the text a little bit bigger so as we can see what's going on. Right, okay, custom font. I think I set it to 16 last time. That's better, isn't it? Okay, so we're logged in as Bob the Builder. Let's type SU to become the root user. Tap in the root user's password, which should be very strong, because if anybody gets the root user's password, you're going to have a problem. Type CD. So I'm now back in the root user's home directory. I'm logged in as the root user. Who am I? This is good. Control L to clear the screen. Let's create one more group. How did I create groups again? Add group. Add group, and we'll add a group called management. I did do that, didn't I? I created the management group and deleted it. Oh, well, I'm going to do it again, because you know what we think about management. It's got to be done. So, management now exists. Tail -3 etc group. It's management with no users in the management group. Right. So let's delete the management group, and we will do that by doing group del. Group del management. And the management group is gone. Right. Superb. Excellent. Well, I hope that has been useful for you if you're doing any Linux systems administration from the command line. This is Linux Lab 3. We'll be coming back with Linux Lab 4 shortly with some more command line skills. Thank you very much indeed for watching, and please subscribe to the channel if you want to have a little learning session on either Linux or Cisco or network security. I hope to put videos up on many subjects over time. But thanks very much for watching, and tune in next time.